Hey guys, it's Elena from And Sewing is Half the Battle. Today I'm going to be talking about applying water-based special effects makeup or pancake style makeup. The type of makeup I'm talking about today is water-based body paint or water-activated makeup. It comes in a dry cake, but when you activate it with water it becomes a paste that you can use as body paint or special effects makeup. This type of makeup is very opaque. It is used a lot in theatrical applications, and it's very good if you need to change your skin tone all over. However, there are some common problems. A lot of people find that it's difficult to apply or that it applies with a lot of streaks, and we want to minimize that. So I'm going to show you some techniques that'll help today. I'm starting with a bowl of clean water and a sponge. Now you can do this with a regular cosmetic sponge. I actually prefer a natural sea sponge because it's a little bit coarser and it helps grind the makeup up a little bit more. So I'm going to start by soaking my sponge. You'll need it fairly wet because you need to put a lot of water into the makeup. Once you have your sponge nice and wet, then you're going to grind the top surface of the makeup into a paste. Now you don't want to just rub it across and get some makeup on. You really want to put some muscle into this and grind it until you have a nice thick paste. And it may take a little bit of pressure to loosen up some of the particles. This is where the coarse sponge comes in handy because the cosmetic wedges are foam and they don't tend to have enough texture to really get a nice paste in here. So you can see it's turning a little more opaque now. It's not just a wet makeup color, but it's actually getting some texture to it. And you want to mix this until you start seeing it stand up a little bit. In cooking terms, it would be peaking, like if you're whipping a meringue. But you want it to actually have some thickness to it, so it's not just watery, but it's actually got some texture. If you can see, there's a little bit of ridging starting to happen in the surface of the makeup. So now I've got a nice thick paste, and now I want to apply it to my skin. I don't want to wipe it on with a striping motion because that's going to make streaks. If I just smear it in lines, you can see how it's already developing some lines here. Instead, what I would do is take my sponge and pat. And the patting motion will actually apply the makeup much more evenly, and it will also blend the edges. So I end up with a nice, smooth, even coat without any streaking or striping. You can do this anywhere you need the makeup. Because this is water-based, it'll start drying fairly quickly because the water starts evaporating. So once the makeup's dry, it's very difficult to go back and add more layers like you can with an oil-based makeup. So it's important to make sure your first coat is nice and even and opaque. So you can continue patting this over all the exposed skin that you need. I should mention, since this is a blue color, it's a good idea if you are using really intense pigments to seal underneath, put on some barrier spray or sealer spray or a primer so that you don't end up staining your skin. Some of the pigments used in this type of makeup can actually stick to your skin a little bit and make you look a little bit off color the next day. So if you're using a really super intense makeup, test it before your event and make sure that it's not going to stain you. If it is, use a barrier spray underneath. A regular makeup sealer would do the trick. So now you can see I've got a nice even coat of blue on. I'm going to let that dry for just a minute. So now you can see the makeup is completely dry on the back of my hand. And once it's dry, unlike oil-based makeup, water-based makeup is pretty stable. It doesn't rub off. So if I run my finger across the back, I'm not going to get any of that pigment rubbing off unless I apply a lot of friction or unless I get additional moisture. If I wash my hands, the water-based makeup will come off. This is where sealers come in very handy. You want to use some sort of sealer spray or setting spray on top of it. Most of these come in an atomizer bottle, so you can just spritz right over it, let that dry, and that will help keep the makeup from rubbing off. These come in a lot of varieties. They're made by many brands. I'll put some in the comments afterwards so you can see. Now let's say you want to do some makeup design that doesn't involve covering a large area of skin, but you want to do some more detail. You can still use your coarse sponge and some water to rough up your makeup into a nice thick paste that's going to give you very opaque pigment. That's very important. You don't want it to be runny. Got a little too much water and it's dripping over the edge there. That's just from the sponge. So once you have your paste, then you can take some other tool, for example, a makeup brush, and you can use that paste that you've just ground up with your coarse sponge and paint it directly on the skin. You can do any sort of detailing you want to do specialty designs, you can do anything you would do normally with a makeup brush. and apply it using that thick paste that you've ground up. The coarse sponge actually helps break up the particles a bit more, so you get a better quality makeup than you would with just adding a little bit of water to your brush and brushing it out, which is why I recommend grinding it up first. Obviously, we've made a little bit of mess here, but the other advantage of water-based makeup is it's easy soap and water cleanup, so it's very simple to clean up. Now this is still very wet because of the quantity of water I added to make the paste. It's important to let this dry completely before you put the lid back on. It's also a good idea to clean out the threading if you have the type that the lid screws on, because once I put the lid back on, if there's all this makeup in the side, when it dries, it will be impossible to get the lid back off. It will glue itself shut. If you're sharing any makeup supplies with other people, always make sure you're sanitizing your utensils and the surface of your makeup before and after you use it. This can be done with an alcohol spray or a makeup sanitizing spray. It's very important not to get bacteria back into this makeup container. Otherwise, when you put the lid back on, it becomes a petri dish and begins growing things you really don't want to put on your skin. So there you have it. I'll put additional information down in the description. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. Thanks for watching.